Welcome to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast, where we explore the local arts culture in the Lehigh Valley. We'll be doing this through conversations with individual artists, administrators, and organizations. We'll explore all types of mediums with the goal of enriching local culture.
Welcome back to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast. Today we have a very special episode recording live with Ward Van Haute at the Bethlehem House Gallery. Ben, would you like to share his bio?
I'd love to. Ward Van Haute is a self-taught painter and sculptor. In July of 2014, he opened Bethlehem House Gallery on Main Street in historic downtown Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Van Haute was born in 1978 in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. He grew up in a military family and moved frequently as a child throughout the eastern United States. In 2001, he received his bachelor's in TV/film production from DeSales University in Center Valley, Pennsylvania. For 15 years, he worked as a properties master and art director for stage and screen in Philadelphia and New York. 8 of those years were as resident props master at Villanova University. In his Bethlehem studio, Studio 945, Ward Van Haute works primarily in oils on the reverse of glass. He marries the folk and sacral arts techniques of reverse painting with contemporary style and subjects. Additional media include found object sculpture, urethane casting, kiln-formed glass, and stop-motion animation. Ward currently lives in Upper Bucks County with his wife, Rebecca, and their 4 children. Hey, Ward. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. And Elise, good to see you both.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're recording here at the Bethlehem House Gallery, surrounded by your work.
Right. Yeah. It's exciting. Glad you could take it on the road.
So exciting. Yeah. We love looking at what artists do in person, and we always push our artists to bring something with them that we can look at in person. And so recording here surrounded by this is just amazing.
Yeah, great. Well, no, I'm happy to do it. We're recording on a day that the gallery's closed, so it worked out very nicely.
Yeah.
You might have some Main Street traffic, noise pollution, but it'll all work out great.
Yeah.
Being a weekday, relatively early in the day, is not a lot of traffic going on out there, but it is just, being where we are in such a great location at the corner of Market and Main Street, downtown Bethlehem in the historic district. We've got these big picture windows, and it's just fantastic sometimes to just look out the window at all the activity on Main Street.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even sometimes when we're done recording, we'll walk around and have dinner or something, and then we're like, let's go look in the window at the House Gallery and see what's in there and see what's going on.
It's such a great Main Street shopping district, restaurants. Absolutely. I mean, we're really blessed to be here, not just on Main Street, but in the Lehigh Valley, which has such a rich arts, community, and I mean, it's inspiring and invigorating to be in a small town area like this that has so much of a dedication to arts and so many wonderful artists working in so many different mediums and disciplines.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So, Ward, tell us a little bit about you and how you got started.
Okay, how far back do we go?
Oh, as far back as you like.
Wherever the art starts.
Right. So, I grew up in a large family. I'm the 4th of 6 children. My mom was a painter by hobby, and I remember as a kid going with her to painting classes, and she'd put me on the ground with a sketchbook and crayons, and she had my little brother in like a belly pack. And when my mom paints, she sort of sways when she paints to sort of soothe the baby. So like I have that like rich memory as a kid of just being there with my mom and the other students in the painting class. So, I mean, it was from a very early age, it was part of my life. I come from a dad who's an engineer and a Marine, and a mom who was, she had the hardest job in the world. She raised 6 kids and still found time to paint. So I remember like the oil paints, the smell of the turpentine and the oil paints. And it's just like all these like early sense memories that I'm sure influenced where I arrived today. So those are the really early memories. So, and, as a kid, I'm sure you've heard it from most of the artists that you've spoken with. I've been drawing or painting since I could hold a paintbrush or a crayon. It's that passion, I think, comes in early. And the wonderful thing about kids in art is you see, like they don't have the same sort of shame and self-doubt that grown-ups have, so it's able to be like pure. So then throughout my childhood, it was how I spent a lot of my time. I wasn't a big video game guy. I wasn't a big comic book guy. I would play outside or draw or create, So that eventually took me, through high school, where I think I took more art classes than my high school offered by 2 or 3. I just started independent studying everything I could do.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really, and wonderful of them to accommodate me in that,
absolutely.
in public school,
Yeah.
So I
that's
sort
rare.
of filled all my core curriculum stuff, and it's just, I wanted more art. So
100%.
I had a wonderful art teacher, June Smith Williams, who has passed away, and the community lost a wonderful soul when she passed. But she touched so many young artists and helped them grow. So really a blessing. It's up in Bradford County, which is not, it's a rural, very rural community.
Right.
So then I went to DeSales University for television and film production, and that is where I, really got my creative career launched. I went there thinking I wanted to be a director of photography, and I left there knowing that I wanted to do sets and props and the aesthetics for film.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was really, really fantastic. I started working in Philadelphia while I was still in school, working on music videos and commercials, working my way into the art department as quickly as I could and up through the ranks. So film world, and then my wife and I got married, and we knew we wanted to start a family, and that freelance life where it was just, paycheck to paycheck. If I worked 10 days a month, it was a good month, just that lifestyle, Ben.
I get it.
It was tricky. We wanted to have a family, and not knowing where the next paycheck was something that we knew would be a challenge.
Yeah.
And my mentor, Steve Pennypacker, he has 5 kids, so I knew it was possible. But yeah, we wanted to approach it with a little more stability. So I got a job at Villanova University in their theater department. They have a great MA program there. So I was the resident prop master there for 7-8 years.
Wow.
Ran
What a cool
shop.
job.
It was really cool. I ran a shop with 2 graduate assistants every year, and then a handful of undergraduate work studies. And it was just really fantastic, learning stuff as I went.
Yeah.
Like the first upholstery job I did, I went to Barnes and Noble and bought a book on upholstery. It was like a little before the accessibility of YouTube. Like YouTube was there, but not everybody was using that as their number one educational source. So I bought a book. Remember those? And learned how to upholster the day that I needed to upholster something.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it was really cool. And worked with great people at Villanova, great students that I'm still very much in touch with. And I had another great mentor there who's also passed away. That's sort of, I guess that's when you get to middle ages, it's some of your mentors start to go. So after 7-8 years at Villanova, I knew it was time to do my own thing. And after helping other people create their vision for, at that point, 15 years, both in film and theater, it was time to make my own vision happen. So my wife and I set out to come up with a business plan for Bethlehem House Gallery. We got some help from people very close to us. And here we are now, 7 years later, sitting in Bethlehem House Gallery, surrounded by my art and the art of many fantastic local and regional artists. This show in particular is the Glass Show. I am a glass artist. I know you spoke with Keith Garuba a couple weeks ago. He's a glass artist. And it's I couldn't be happier. Everything came together better than I could have possibly imagined.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's very cool to see your vision come to life, and we talk a little bit about the stepping stone idea and kind of how you get from one thing to the other. And that's such a natural progression, going from a prop master to what you do here. That's just very cool.
I'm probably the first person in history to ever go from film production to theater. Usually goes the other way.
That is very true.
And then from that to visual fine art. Yeah. It's sort of a backwards way to go to what I ultimately wanted to do anyways. The reason I went to film school is because I wanted a job. And I thought that, working as an independent visual artist, that was going to be challenging. So I made sure I developed some creative skills that were employable.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's key to getting jobs as an independent contractor.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, this interview is particularly exciting for me because I went to school for arts administration, and it's cool to see that concept of arts administration in practice. And I think a lot of people who fall into that category definitely start from that like passion for the arts, passion for what they're doing, and then it kind of grows into that administrative role. But you do both, like you make both work, and that's so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a juggling act. And I've had many wonderful people working with me over the years that help balance that.
Yeah.
I mean, as a visual artist, I have some of that sort of chaotic mind that other visual artists that we know and love have. So having that and trying to like keep things organized and scheduled and everything is a really big challenge for me. So having that support from colleagues and family is big. And honestly, anytime that you're trying to achieve something, something big and make a fully realize a vision, you really need the support of your loved ones, and you need to find a good support group.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I'd love to know how your work in film and theater went into opening and designing what would become the Bethlehem House Gallery.
Cool. So initially, I guess we got to start off with how aside from just being a kid coloring while my mom painted, how I started in visual art as an adult.
Yeah.
And when I was working in film, like I said, I was a bachelor, I was freelancing, and I could go a couple weeks without work.
Yeah.
So like any young man in their 20s, I found less constructive activities to do. I found myself very comfortable at a bar.
Yeah.
And after like a year of that, being like, all right, I need better ways to fill my time. And, I took a lot of hikes. I started dabbling in photography, and most importantly, I started painting. And I had already sort of given myself a lead into that. I worked on a Will Smith music video my senior year of college, and I made what I thought was a lot of money. It was really only like a few $100s, but it was a lot of money. So I went out and bought an easel and some canvases and some paints and just started teaching myself how to paint again, after being a little out of practice since high school and growing up. So that was like a much more constructive way to fill my time. I had been working at a scenic shop in Philadelphia where at the time we were doing a lot of like plexiglass displays for conventions and things.
Yeah.
And we had a ton of plexiglass scraps. So I started painting on the reverse side of the plexiglass scraps that they were throwing away. Artists want free materials as much as they can get them, especially young artists. So I did that, and that just became how I filled my time between, working on productions. Go paint for a few hours and then go for a hike and everything. So that's how I got to creating with like a focus. And then after years of working in the aesthetics departments in entertainment, it was seemed a natural progression at that point to get my visual art out there. And I was thinking about going to get my MFA and talking with my wife and her family and my family. We decided that, the best thing to do is just to do it. Go get an MFA later, but let's start with the business.
Yeah.
So I was still working. We still had a bunch of little kids. I was still working at Villanova doing props, and my wife started reading about how to run a gallery. And my wife's name is Rebecca, by the way, so we can call her Becca or Rebecca in this conversation instead of just
and give her a little shout out.
Yes. So while she was researching, she came across in one book, one chapter that talked about having something that sets you apart from other galleries. And we were talking one night after putting the kids to bed, and she's like, it'd be great if we could, with all the work you've done designing sets, designing spaces, and I've designed hundreds of spaces, and mostly home interiors because I was mostly working in commercials, and most of what we did was home interiors. She said, it'd be great if we could find a house, and that could be the gallery. Downstairs will be the exhibit space, and then we'll live upstairs. And I was like, that's a beautiful idea. And, I can decorate, design the space, do what I love doing, and then fold that into this new business, set ourselves aside. And that's where the Bethlehem House came from. So we had this dream that we would find, this like old Victorian house on a main street somewhere in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Delaware. We didn't know where, but, and live and work. Well, the reality of having 4 small children in a gallery space sort of struck us as maybe irresponsible, maybe impractical. So that, sort of evolved into what you see now, which was finding ourselves in a space that we could demonstrate and present as a home. And my experience doing set decorating, set design, and props evolved into this space here on Main Street where we have, we've got 5 rooms around a lobby vestibule, and I get to do all the crazy stuff that the directors and art directors would, shy away from. I get to do loud colors, bold colors, crazy furniture pieces. It sort of gave me a lot of freedom. But yeah, that's exactly how it evolved. It came out of my working in the art department in entertainment.
Yeah.
It's funny because being just a couple blocks away from our studio, we've been here a lot, and I think that something that has come up in our podcast a lot is what's the I always say, like, I want my house to look like that, or like I want that furniture. I want that aesthetic where I live. And I think that it's just such a unique space, and the way that you do it creates that I need it kind of feeling.
Wonderful.
Like you look at art and you say like, I need it. Maybe something that if it was in a traditional gallery space, you wouldn't look at it that way. But I could say like, oh, I have a chair kind of like that in my house. I need that painting to go with it kind of thing.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
So Rebecca doesn't come from an arts background. She was an early ed educator before we had a bunch of children very quickly. I think we had the second one before her maternity leave was up for the first one. So, oh my goodness. So she doesn't have the art background. She certainly appreciates the arts, but it wasn't part of her real life experience. And when we were talking, she said, I enjoy going to galleries with you, but there's a lot of times in those, white wall galleries that I just feel like I don't get it. I feel alienated, and she's like, sometimes it's just, I don't know, it's intimidating. So anchoring it in a home. And, philosophically, that's what I personally believe, and Rebecca believes, is that art belongs in a home. It's supposed to be seen. After years of working in my own studio and just piling the work up and never letting anybody see it because I wasn't confident in where I was yet, you finally get to the point where it's like, what good is this if nobody can see it?
Right.
Definitely.
And the home is sort of the most natural place to present art that speaks to you. So I tell customers that come in and they're like, what do I, they don't know how to start their collection. I was like, well, just buy something that speaks to you, something that you can relate to.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the painting matching the sofa. It'll all come together when your emotional connection to it lives in the space. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Using that idea of art and owning art as a form of self-expression, I'd love to talk about, and congratulations for winning Best Dressed in the Valley.
Man.
I'm loving your outfit right now.
Thanks.
And I'd love to hear about how fashion and even getting up and getting dressed in the morning goes into your form of self-expression as an artist.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it of course evolved like so many other things.
Yeah.
And sort of on a similar trajectory as my own visual art. When I first started making art, I was working very much in black and whites and sort of muted colors. And, in the 90s in high school, during the grunge era, I was wearing olive drab and brown and tan all the time, When I started painting, and particularly when I started working with glass, my color palette got stronger and bolder and louder, and my wardrobe sort of went that direction as well. And it sort of, I don't know if any stylist in the world would encourage, a 5'6" overweight guy to wear patterns and prints and loud colors that would draw attention to, like, I'm wearing, burgundy pants right now that draws attention to the fact that I have like a 27-inch inseam, So, and Lehigh Valley Style approached me about their Men of Style issue. I think it was 2019.
I think it was, yeah.
And I laughed and said yes. And my brothers and my sisters and my parents all got a big kick out of that. So, I mean, it was really, I was very grateful to them for recognizing that and giving me that platform. And it's flattering. So, but yeah, I express myself through my wardrobe with bold colors, loud prints, and colorful shoes. It's whatever I can do
I love it.
to sort of brighten up my day and other people's day. I hope it brightens up other people's day. Who knows? Yeah. But I've influenced my kids in that department too. So
that's awesome. You're gonna have a bunch of little best dressed of the valley,
right.
little minions on your hand.
No, it's really funny. My daughter was, I think she was 10 when that was happening. So approaching, adolescence, and at the end of the reception for the launch of the magazine. They give us this big poster-sized portrait of yourselves, which is just kind of hysterical. So I brought it home and I gave it to Audrey. I was like, "This is for you. This is for your bedroom." And I got this great photograph of her holding it with just this unimpressed look on her face. Oh, that's awesome. Fantastic. You got to be able to laugh at yourself, right?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about artists and what other parts your creativity, how that bleeds into the rest of your life, and through wardrobe, through studio space, through what your own home looks like. Mm-hmm. Is there, other than your own artwork at home, is there a collection of art that you have from a specific artist, or is it kind of all over the place?
I've built a pretty sizable collection of Lehigh Valley artists. Oh, now, they with, as far as, I think people come in here and think that my house is pristinely designed with warm, bright colors on the walls and sort of expertly hung artwork and everything. It's, the carpenter's house is never fully complete, So we've lived in our house for, well, actually we moved in right before the gallery opened. So that was an insane year. But we never fully landed, never got the design of the space the way I would want it. It'll happen eventually, but again, there's all these kids running around, and
you were busy designing this space.
We're busy designing this space
over and over and over again.
Over and over. Yeah, we do it every 3 months. Yeah. But yes, I do have a pretty sizable collection of Lehigh Valley artists. Just a couple of my of the standout ones. I do have a couple Arturo Cabrera pieces in my home. I've got several Khalil Alaic pieces in my collection, which I'm just extremely happy to have those hanging in my home. I've got one of his sculptures and a bunch of his etchings. Wow. In the beginning, I collected larger pieces, and now I'm running out of wall space, so I'm collecting smaller pieces and just trying to really go full tilt with the salon hang in my house and just get as much on the walls as I possibly can without it being, overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it is. I've always enjoyed dressing a space, finding interesting furniture. So we've got some nice pieces in our house. there's of course so much I would like to do, but time, money, and
that's
life
for
get
when
in the way.
for when your kids are out of the house, right?
Yeah,
you can
exactly.
do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. So, and also like they're not real little anymore, so they're not destroying things like they did when they were babies. But like that's another thing to consider is like, we're going to spend a lot of money on this couch that they're just going to spit up on or smear their peanut butter on or whatever, you know. So, but yeah, the galleries where I get to really explore that and, you know, take the risks that maybe I wouldn't take at home. Yeah. Maybe I'd have to have a discussion with Becca about what color to paint the walls. I don't have to do that here.
So you always have a lot of unique furniture in here.
Yes.
Where does it come from?
Oh, man, that's a secret. Everyone's always trying to get that information from me. Some of the pieces in here are artist made. I would like for like 90% of the furniture in here to be artist made. Of course, with the soft furniture, with the upholstered furniture, that's a little more difficult.
Yeah.
But no, as a prop master, I had several sources in Philadelphia for furniture. And yeah, that's all I'll say. I have several sources.
Love it.
And I buy and resell.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense.
yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I like that secret. The secret of the house gallery. Where do you get the furniture? It's
There are people that can tell you because there are people that have come with me to pick up, but they're sworn to secrecy.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the secret of the garment district in New York City.
Right.
Where do you get your patterns? Somewhere in New York.
Yep. Got to keep some of our cards close to our chest.
I get it.
Well, I'll tie into the glass show that's here now because one of my favorite things, I love all of the artwork, of course, but when we came in for the opening, my first thought was, I love all the rugs on the floor, the
Yeah.
overlapping rugs. I was like, this feels like so homey and so cool.
Well, that's not a secret. I will tell you where the rugs come from because we have a partnership with them and they've been wonderful loaning the rugs for us. We do our best to sell them for them. But Ward's Rug Gallery, and that is just coincidental. There's no relation. Ward's Rug Gallery in Allentown provides us with most of the rugs and floor coverings that we have in the gallery. So every show I go over there. It's actually one of the more challenging parts of doing this is going there and flipping through hundreds of rugs top to bottom. It's a workout, you know, but they've been really gracious in letting us use really whatever they have in their stock. And then we return it at the end of the show if it doesn't sell and then pick up more rugs. So a big shout out to Ward's Oriental Rug Gallery in Allentown. Yeah. And it was funny when I first approached them, I called and said, "Hi, this is Ward." When they answered, they were like, "Ward's Rug Gallery." I was like, "Hi, this is Ward." They're like, "Yep, you got Ward's." And I was like, "No, this is Ward Van Haute of Bethlehem House Gallery." But Ward, yeah, it's like, yeah. My first name is Ward, and he's like, "Oh," and it was really just a funny experience. So Gary Ward and Kevin Ward and Pat Ward all run the Rug Gallery. So
nice.
But this was a particularly fun show because we got a whole bunch of small Oriental rugs and just laid them out overlapping in just a really fun geometric pattern on the floor that mirrors the geometric patterns in the sculptures that surround them, which relate very nicely to the two-dimensional works on the walls. And I was really pleased with that composition.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I like that a lot. I like rugs a lot, so I was really excited when we came in.
Have you been to Ward's Rug Gallery?
I haven't, but now I have to.
Oh, it's a treat. You have to go. You have to go. And they're so nice.
So that's all in the kind of lobby vestibule area of the house gallery. Do we want to do kind of like a verbal walkthrough of the rest of the show?
Well, sure. All right. So as you walk in, we've got double doors, oak on the outside, glass on the inside. So we keep those open and as inviting as possible, weather dependent, of course. But as you walk in, the first thing you see is a Khalil Alake steel and glass piece. And Khalil and I are good friends, and it was funny. A couple shows ago at the opening, he was like, "Why am I not in your glass show?" It's like, "Khalil, you work in every material, but like I think of you as steel or stone or he's like, well, I can work in glass. I was like, I know, brother, you can work in anything. I said, all right, make me a sculpture and it'll be in the show. So, of course, 5 weeks later, he's got this fantastic piece that's steel and glass. And I think it's one of the finest pieces he's ever made. And I'm an enormous fan of his work. So, so you have that piece right away. And then another piece of Khalil's that's also steel and glass. That's sort of like a tall steel pillar with a column in the middle of colored glass. And then to the left of that is a sculpture that combines steel and fused glass by Dr. Lee Riley, who is an oncology doctor with St. Luke's Health Network. So it's just really awesome to see, somebody that's got that medical scientific mind, but then also in equal parts that creative art mind. So he's a fascinating person. And then you'll see a couple pieces on the wall by an artist that I personally enjoy his work.
That wouldn't end up being yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Some guy named Ward, right?
Yeah, I know a guy, so I get into these shows at the Bethlehem House Gallery. So this is a new series, which I think we'll talk about in a little bit. Yeah. So it's interesting, the flow of the gallery, often people go right. I don't know why, but people tend to go right, and that would take them into this room that we're sitting in now, which is sort of a combination of a living room or a den with a music studio. So we have wonderful guitar stands that were created by Matthew Caleri of Steel City Vintage, and then my work again in this room. Couple chairs hand painted by Jeff Schaller, who's a wonderful artist down in Chester County, might be Montgomery. So yeah, just very warm, bright, summery room. And then as you pass through my room, you're going to go into what we call the Septagon room, because there are 7 walls, and there are currently grayscale stripes on 2 of the walls, and then deep purple on the other walls. And in that room, we have a lot of the glass vessels that were created by Brian Tosland and Dennis Gardner and Jeff Waterhouse, and then some fused glass by Rhonda Snort and Roy Groover, who was actually my fused glass teacher at the Banana Factory when I took my first glass fusing
That's
class.
Awesome.
Yeah. He's not the first of my former teachers that I've shown in the gallery, which is also kind of cool. And then you go back into another living room space that has this really awesome barbershop furniture, vintage barbershop waiting room furniture with like this checkered pattern. It's really great. And then mosaic work by Kim Hogan. And her work is really just fantastic. The level of detail she gets out of broken shards of glass is just unbelievable.
I love her stuff.
Yeah.
We actually got to talk with her a little bit when we came into the opening. Well, I was kind of embarrassed because we were standing there talking about her work, and then she was standing behind us. She goes, "Oh, hi, I'm Kim. That's my stuff." And I was like, "Oh no, what did I say?"
And she's just the sweetest person in the world, too.
Yeah, very, very sweet. And her work is very cool. I love the detail.
You can stare at them for hours and just find these little vignettes within the piece that are just captivating.
Yeah. And you recently found a piece that's on display here on the billboard.
I found her billboard.
Oh,
yes.
wonderful.
I live over, I don't know if I'm supposed to say where it is. She said that if people find it, they should reach out to her.
Well,
so
don't give up the secrets.
You'll have to look. It is her owl mosaic, so you'll have to keep an eye out for it in the Lehigh Valley. But
which is currently in the gallery, the owl mosaic. It's a triptych.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can find that billboard in the Lehigh Valley or surrounding areas. That's the hint that you get.
That's as specific as we can get. And then as you pass, so there's also some stained glass by Matthew Caleri, and more vessels by all the artists that do vessels that I listed before. Danny Polk is an additional one. And then as you pass through that living room space, you come to the back room. It's like back center in the gallery, and that is set up as a very modern office right now. I believe I have teal and black walls in there with steel furniture made by Scott Feathers, who's a local furniture designer. He does custom work in steel and aluminum. And on the walls there are more pieces by Roy and Rhonda, glass fusers, and then Keith Garuba's drip series is hanging in that room, and Danny Polk glass sculptures in the corner. Throughout the space, you're also going to see silk flower arrangements that were created by the assistant director of the gallery, Rachel Bell, who also has a studio in the Banana Factory and is a fantastic painter as well as floral artist. And then from there, you come into, as you round back to the front end of the gallery, you'll come to the room where, when you would come in, you had gone left. It's our great room. And we usually have a living room space and a dining room space in that area. It's the highest ceilings that we have in the space. We have a fireplace in there that is movable because I'm a props guy and everything needs to be, multifunctional. So it was actually designed in the studio that I used to work in, the scenic shop that I used to work in Philly.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's made out of plywood and foam, so it's movable.
I think the first time I was in here, and it must have been Rachel that I spoke to a few years ago, and she asked if I'd been in here before, and I said no. So she kind of gave me the walkthrough, and she said, "Do you want to know a secret?" And I said, "Sure." And she goes, "The fireplace isn't real." She goes, "Every time you come in here, it'll be in a different spot." And ever since then, that's the first thing I tell people. I'm like, they have the coolest fireplace in there, and it's fake, and you'd never know.
Yeah. So there's additional. Actually, that room has probably the majority of the artists in the show in that one room. So Keith Garuba has additional work in there, and Kim and Roy and Rhonda and Brian. And then there's these really fantastic glass sculptures by Dan Getz, who is both a glass blower and he flameworks glass too. So they're these seedlings, they've got roots and these very abstract seeds, and then the plant growing out of the top, and they're sort of floating in space, and they're really delightful pieces. And then in and around that, we have furniture that was designed by Shweta Jajodia, who's an interior designer, designs furniture, has it made by other artisans. But so that's pretty much the space. It's warm, bright colors. You think glass show and you think the fragility of it all, but really, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, it doesn't seem that fragile, this show. It's pretty sturdy.
Yeah, sturdy actually was the word I was thinking of.
So a lot of people have come in, I've seen them come to the door with their kids and then, sort of back off, and I'll go over and be like, nuts, bring them in, let them experience it. And they're like, well, we're really nervous with the glass. It's not, it's all pretty stable and secure, and don't worry about it.
Yeah. I think when people think glass art, and we talked about this with Keith's work too, because his is very different from traditional, but with that show Blown Away on Netflix now, and things like Dale Chihuly, his glass art, it is very fragile, and you see that kind of fragility and how you have to be very careful with everything and how delicately it's put together. But I think I even referenced when we said we were going to come over here about how I really enjoyed the Chihuly Glass Museum, so I'm excited to see a glass show in the Valley. And it was polar opposite of what I had thought, but I really, really enjoy it. Yeah. And it's just such a cool integration of so many different kinds of glass art too. So
thanks. Yeah, that was one of my goals. And the really interesting thing about this glass show was that, and maybe Keith mentioned this, I'm not sure, this was supposed to be spring of 2020. So it was postponed due to this global pandemic that we've all been dealing with, although it looks like there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, it does.
Many of the glass artists lost access to their studios during the pandemic for months and months. I have my own space, so I was able to work. But particularly the glass blowers, they worked at the Banana Factory, Goggle Works, other glass shops around. They shut down. For 6 to 9 months, they had no access to their studios. Wow. So instead of postponing it for a few months, I had to postpone it for a year to give those artists time to complete their works. Yeah. And I think a lot of that opened up sort of the creative spirit, and the artists gave them lots of time, first of all, to conceptualize the works. but also time to rethink it and come at it from a different point. This is a very different series than I was planning on showing myself. Sure. My own work in this show. These pieces were all created during the pandemic. Wow. So, and I know that's the same for many of the artists in this exhibit.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's definitely been a theme, is just people are coming up with stuff that, because they had extra time, or just stuff that they never would have really put together, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this series, since we're sitting in front of it, might as well talk about it. This series is not like your traditional work, correct?
It is not, although this might be a direction that I continue going for a little while because I've really very much enjoyed it. These are much more abstract than what I typically do. They're still representational because there are, of course, there's portraiture in it, but it's less grounded in reality than what I typically paint. So I've done a lot of industrial landscapes. I've done a lot of flowers. Flowers sell. So, I know that's not why we should create the art that we create.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll say, like, I'll do one series for me and one series for them.
Yeah.
We
There's
do
always
still
a
have to
little
pay
of
the
that.
bills,
Yeah.
And, like, nobody paints the same flower. Nobody paints a flower the same way.
Definitely.
So I had a very successful poppy series, and it was all done in reverse on glass with palette knife. So, which is sort of, usually when you think palette knife, you think like heavy texture.
Yeah.
I did that on the back of glass, which smooths the texture down to almost nothing. So,
Yeah.
But it was a really interesting way to make the mark
Definitely.
on the support. So yeah, this series is, I don't want to say it's a departure from what I usually do. It's certainly an evolution. And a lot of my really early work was very illustrative, and there's certainly an illustrative feeling to this series. And, a lot of times when I start a new series, it's really to overcome that sort of writer's block that artists get, artists of all mediums get.
Oh, yeah.
And I was early pandemic in a state of writer's block, like you said, a lot more time on our hands.
Yeah.
But sort of a lot of things going on in the world that are distracting. So I was sort of stuck in a space. And, you sort of go back to your roots, and contour drawing is something that all artists have done at some point.
Definitely.
It's part of your art education. So these started as contour drawings and, grew into these continuous line paintings with, filled in with color fields and, to help fully realize the images.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, you've listened to a couple of our episodes, and we like to do audio description since this is an auditory program. So I'd love to read the description for one of your pieces, if that's okay.
I'd love to hear it.
And
This is one of my favorite parts of your podcast, by the
you.
way.
Usually, actually, I'll read it to the artist before we start, but I didn't today because I'd like you to contest it if there's anything that you disagree with, because I think I'll preface with this series that we're speaking of are these gorgeous, very colorful, like continuous line portraits. And they are there's an abstract part to it, but there's also a very distinct, like it's a face kind of thing. So I'll read this and then we can discuss. So this is for the piece that you have right up front, Electric and Eclectic, done in 2021 by Ward Van Haute. And the medium is oils on reverse of fused glass panel mounted on board. The background of this piece is a square board painted magenta with a black circle in the center. Mounted over top of the circle is an amorphous-shaped piece of fused glass. The glass is reverse painted in a variety of shapes and colors. Wrapped around and through the shapes and in different colors is a continuous line drawing of a figure with short hair parted to the side, blue eyes with defined eyebrows, a small rounded nose, and red lips. The single line used to draw the hair wraps through the portrait to create the outline of the figure's facial features. The continuous line used to shape and outline the figure's faces trails off the glass and into the black circle and background, running to the edge on the middle right and bottom left of the piece.
I think you nailed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's really, and we're not in the same room as that piece right now, so I can't see. I couldn't look at it while you were speaking. So, it's really amazing to sort of hear that description of something that's so. I mean, like, it requires seeing to understand, but you do a fantastic job.
Thank you.
of describing these, and I'm very familiar with the works that you've described in other episodes, and it's really it's fascinating that you're even able to do that. But I imagine that the listeners, if they close their eyes, they can probably come pretty close to imagining what this piece is. So thank you for that. The black behind the amorphous glass shape is that's sort of the void, you know, and these pieces, I mean, they are 2-dimensional pieces, but there's 3 dimensions to them because the glass panels are suspended in front of the void by about 3/4 of an inch. And in exploring these pieces, I wanted to, you know, sort of exploring our, you know, humanity, doing all these portraits and sort of finding the common link and the continuity from individual to individual. And I think that speaks a lot to our own humanity and sort of thinking about what that continuity is. And that's going to be different for everybody. For everybody that views the piece, it's going to be different. For me, it's a shared creator and there's a spirituality to it. And then that void and that separation from the void sort of speaks to our individuality and, you know, maybe the breakdown of structure, but then it goes right back to the color and that line continues through it. So those are sort of the ideas that I was exploring with this, and then just fluidity, trying to let that line move through the piece, through the faces, through the features as effortlessly as I could.
Yeah, the one thing I didn't fit into the description but can say now, the continuous line that's used to create the portrait, once it comes off the background and kind of hits into that black circle on all of these pieces, not just the one I described, but it's a different color. Yeah. And I really like that. That's it almost takes me a minute to look at it and figure out where the line connects to the amorphous glass piece that is lifted up a little bit off the board, but just super well done. I really, really enjoyed this series.
Now, the other fun thing about it is all of the color fields of the boards, you know, the surrounding color around the black void, those are all leftover paint from previous gallery shows. Wow. So each of these also reminds me of a room that I've decorated. But that might be just, you know, for me and not for them. But yeah, I can remember every single room that these colors have highlighted.
Awesome. That's very cool. So the other part of your work that has made it, I think, a little bit interactive is the social media component. Yeah. And I'd been in preparation for the episode looking through your Instagram, and I love watching the little videos that you do of how the reverse glass painting is done, and you do the face first and then you paint the background over top, because in my mind that I have to think about it quite a bit for it to make sense. But then when I see your videos, it's like, oh, nice. Like that's really cool.
That's probably a good time to talk about, and thank you for that, a good time to talk about reverse painting.
Yeah,
because that's my preferred medium support combination. I'm a reverse painter on glass. And, you know, if people don't know what that is, it's essentially you've got the front of the glass and then you have the reverse of that. I paint on the back side of the paint. So everything that I'm doing is not only reverse in that it's mirror image of, like the viewer is going to see the mirror image of what I'm painting, but I also have to work from foreground to background. Whereas when you're painting the normal way, you paint from back to front. So, so that's what I do. I paint in reverse. It is not a new technique. In fact, it was folk art, sacral art in Eastern Europe, where religious icons were painted on glass. So I've taken that medium. I've been doing this for 15, 20 years now, painting on glass. And yeah, I don't know. It's just, it does something with the way the light reacts to the panel. The light doesn't get saturated bouncing, back and forth between, if something's framed behind glass,
Right.
you get a little bit of
the glare.
refraction. There's certainly glare on these, especially in this room with these big windows. But that glare's on the front. It's not reacting beneath the glass. And it's just something about the color saturation, and it kind of takes whatever ambient light hits it and throws it right back at you with sort of an intensity. Now, I've got these lit professionally, so they're going to throw a lot of light anyways. But if you hang them in a well-lit room, they're going to throw that light right back at you. So yeah, that's what I've been doing since shortly after I started painting, is reverse painting on glass. Now I'm at the point where I used to paint on old, trash picked windows and plexiglass panels that I took out of the dumpster at the scenic shop I worked in. Now I'm making my own glass panels in a kiln. And that's where we get these biomorphic shapes.
That's awesome.
Biomorphic.
You brought up lighting and how that affects the paintings. All the artists that we've had from the House Gallery have talked about the joys of seeing their work properly lit. And I'd love to hear about the challenges that you faced when working in this setting with glass.
Yeah, sure. Because glass is highly reflective.
Yes.
We designed, and with Gerald Forsyth, who's a theatrical lighting designer in Philadelphia and a colleague of mine at Villanova, he designed this theatrical grid system in the gallery, and we use Source 4 minis, which are lights that project, and they also have shutters, so we can close in on each individual piece, and pretty much every piece of art in here gets a special, and the way that it's designed, I can hang a light literally any square inch of this space. Wow. So that helped a lot with the glass show, because we can hit any angle. And of course, the natural light from outside is more difficult to control.
Of course.
But in the gallery with Jerry's he comes up for every show. After we hang, he comes up and lights the show for us. So it's something I can do, but I can't do it as well as him. And
understandable.
He's got 30 plus years of lighting design experience.
Right.
So, so only the best for my artists, right? So yeah, it was a challenge, and it was, Jerry and I have worked together for a long time. So, every once in a while we come in and might not have the same idea of what should happen. And that Khalil sculpture out there is 9 feet tall in our vaulted lobby space.
Yeah.
And I placed all the sculptures where I wanted them. And, Jerry came in and we had our meeting, our walkthrough, and he said, okay, these might need to move so that I can, really access them and light them. I said, nope, they're where they're going, Jerry. We got to figure a way out. So always a good sport. Jerry worked it out, Yeah. He did it. So that was really challenging. Lighting, I want to say that our lighting pipe in that area is a little less than 9 feet, and the piece is taller than it. So he needed to work some magic, and he did.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a challenge with the lights, but if you work the angles, you can make it so that the light's not blinding the viewer or casting crazy hot spots or and then the other thing that we've embraced is that there's more than one place to stand and look at a painting. So if in one place there's a glare, the viewer can move a foot or two to the right, and it's going to be a different experience. And honestly, you should move around a piece when you're looking at it.
Definitely.
So yeah, that it's a challenge, but it wasn't an insurmountable challenge. And the other really cool thing is the shadows that these pieces cast. The sculptural pieces and the reflections with the pieces on the walls, they cast really cool reflections on the floor and on the furniture and on the walls. And it's something that, I don't know that we planned that Of course, when we started lighting, it became apparent. But like in the beginning, I hadn't thought of all the extra really cool shapes that the lights and the shadows would make in this show in particular. So
definitely.
So that was sort of a delightful discovery.
Yeah. I noticed that when we were in here for the opening, because there was a show I worked on in college that there was like these fiber sculptural pieces, and after doing the lighting, the shadows were really evident. And that's something now that I really enjoy looking for in shows is what's like in my brain, I've never said this out loud, but I always call it like the secondary show. Like what is the art just by being in this space? What's like another experience that it's creating? And with the glass, that was what I was thinking about when we walked in. I was like the rugs and like the shadow on the rugs from the lights and oh my gosh, just so cool.
Yeah. And I know where those shadows fall are intentional on Jerry's part, but it is something that I didn't anticipate. And it's really cool walking in. Oftentimes he'll work on a weekend when nobody's here.
Yeah.
And I'll come in Monday and it's just like, wow, that's better than I expected.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, having that support group, people that, creative minds that you can collaborate with and that support your decisions, that don't, he could have said, no, we can't light this one that way. It's got to move.
Yeah.
And in the creative process in film and in theater, you do sometimes run into those situations where a director will say, this is how I want it.
Yeah.
And, as somebody that worked for directors as prop master, sometimes I had to say, no, we can't do it. It's either budget restrictive or we don't have enough time or it's just not physically possible. So I had one director once ask me, he's like, there was a scene where they was on stage, a scene where they're throwing a chair. And he's like, will this chair break if we throw it? So yeah, if you throw it enough times, it's gonna break. Well, can we do anything to prevent it from breaking? No, but I can fix it after you break it. So I think I repaired that chair 10 times, during the course of the show. But no, I can't change the laws of physics.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can do my best to make it keep working for us,
Definitely.
So, and that's all part of the creative process. I think a collaborative creative process is find, and you never say no, like hard no. You say no, but. No, we can't do it that way, but we can do it this way. We can try this. We can see what we can do. You always have to come with a solution, right?
Yeah. That's kind of the opposite of the rules of improv. Instead of yes and, it's no but.
I was going to say, that's like the visual curatorial alternative to yes and, it's no but.
Yeah. And I remember when I was starting off in film, as a PA, having people tell me, people that have been in the industry for a while, be like, the answer is always yes. Even when it's no, it's yes. You're going to find a way. So. Yeah,
that was a school rule. It was like working with artists. Just say yes and then work it out later.
Right. But as part of that creative team, sometimes the answer does have to be no, but it can't be a hard no. It needs to be one that there's a solution that you're working towards.
Yeah, definitely. Do we have another audio description for this series?
I'll do the audio description for the piece that's in the room that we're in, if that's all right.
I won't look at it.
And close your eyes if you like, from the perspective of a listener.
Although I do know the piece pretty well.
I would hope so. So I will preface this by saying these are part of the same series, so in similar style, but not the same piece. So this piece is titled Composed Cohorts, done in 2021 by Ward Van Haute. The medium is oils on reverse of fused glass panel mounted on board, and it is 25 inches by 31 inches. The background of this piece is a rectangular board painted light blue with a black oval in the center that commands a large part of the space. Mounted over top of the oval is an amorphous-shaped piece of fused glass. The glass is reverse painted with a colorful patchwork of blues, reds, oranges, greens, and yellows. The diversity of the shapes painted on the glass emphasizes the facial features of the continuous line-drawn faces of two figures in the general center of the piece. Other than the color of their red lips and blue-green eyes, the two figures are free from any notion of traditional portraiture. The continuous line used to shape and outline the figure's faces trails off the glass and into the black oval and light blue background surrounding it. You can open your eyes now.
Yeah, I did really close my eyes for that. That blue is one of my favorite interior house colors. It's called Calypso, which is just such a wonderful name for a color, Calypso.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually the first one. That was the first one in this series. So, yeah, I think it's a beautiful description of a piece that I didn't know where I was going with this series at all when I started it. This was the just playing around piece. And, I had finished many of the panels and didn't know how to present them, and that's when you're working in sort of amorphous shapes. That's the real challenge. How do we hang this on the wall?
Yeah.
How do we present this and display it? So then that took us to the board, and that took me to the elliptical shape, which I had to remember math to draw an ellipse, And that's not my favorite part of being a visual artist, having to remember math. But yeah, so those two faces, they grew out of, they're gestural, it was just let my hand go where my hand is going to go. And that's where the image is. And they were the launching point for all of the other pieces that we're surrounded by right now.
Wow.
The one thing with both of the descriptions and in looking at the pieces that I tried to avoid was assigning gender or like masculine or feminine or young or old to each of these. But when we were talking about the first piece, you mentioned like a deep spirituality to each piece. And are there people in mind that you thought of when you were creating these, or they are very amorphous?
Yeah, I'd say there aren't specific people with most of them. Sometimes, just, sense memory and life, after the image is done, it'll trigger some past experience, somebody that I know. With this series, they certainly did not start off as specific people. Past work that I've done are certainly grounded in the people that are in my life, particularly Rebecca. Like she creeped into many, many, many of my paintings over the years, but that's what muses do, right?
Yeah. I get that.
That's what muses do.
Definitely.
So no, not specific people, but again, just sort of like humanity, our brothers and sisters. And yeah, they are pretty genderless, I think. Some of them, I mean, there's one with a guy with a beard, so,
Take that as you will.
Take that as you will. But yeah, most of them are, and, some of them in the titles, I think I assign gender, but not with any sort of intention.
Sure.
Just
or
however.
Even definitiveness, maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
Open. Yeah. I love the openness to interpretation with these pieces.
Right.
You can stare at it for a long time and think about who it might be or what they might look like, or since some of them don't even have the fully formed face, I like to look at them and kind of like piece together the rest of the face when I look at it.
What's missing? The negative space.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it was really a fun series to work on, and I do think I will be continuing this series. Sometimes I have a very firm finish to a series, like, all right, after this piece is done, I'm moving on.
Yeah.
But this series is pretty open-ended, and, I don't know that the next round of it will be exactly the same, but it will evolve from this, I think. I've had a lot of fantastic feedback on this work. I've sold several of them.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's always nice, It's not necessary, but it's nice. So I will enjoy continuing exploring these lines and how they create forms.
Yeah. A few episodes ago, I brought up a few similarities in my mind to some traditional pop art. And I'd love to hear from your perspective whether that is accurate, whether that is completely misconstrued. We talked about after we came to the opening of the glass show.
Okay.
We were talking about a number of the pieces, and I said that the bright colors and the repeated theme of the continuous line and the more abstract figures reminded me of some famous pop art pieces.
Okay, great.
And especially the way that they're presented, like series of 4s, series of 2s, multiples.
Yeah, great.
So
yeah, I'm sorry I missed that episode.
oh, that's totally fine.
I'm definitely going to go back and listen and look for it. But you can accurately compare this to pop art. It's not relating to specific popular culture aspects, but definitely the color palette and the sort of compositional sensibilities are very much in that pop art world.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, just the use of circles. It's
definitely.
I mean, I look over at this Jeff Schaller piece. Jeff Schaller's a fantastic pop artist.
Yeah.
And you've got the circles and the color. I mean, they live very much in the same world, without the sort of pop art icons.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think iconography is really important in pop art.
Definitely.
And I could certainly push this to a point where these were iconic images.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's accurate. So it's certainly in the color palette.
Yeah. Yeah, that was that, and the series and presentation reminded me a lot of.
Yeah, now my brain works very much in series.
Okay.
Like when I'm creating, I will focus on one series all the way through and not mix in other stuff because
Fascinating.
it's distracting.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for me to shift. I mean, I'm already designing spaces and painting at the same time. If I add multiple series at the same time, I think that chaos will just erupt into something that nobody wants to see.
Yeah, that's understandable.
But yeah, I very much work in series, and I do imagine pieces hanging together as I'm creating them. Maybe that's the designer in me.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 3 panels on the wall behind you two with the piece Elise just described, those, when I painted them, I saw them hanging in that exact
That's cool.
composition. So
that's definitely the designer part. I think that's a lot of foresight.
Yeah.
I like it.
And it's cool having the opportunity to hang in this space too, because if you saw it in your mind that way, it's awesome that we as the viewers can see it in the same way that you intended it to be presented.
Yep. Yeah. And I guess it's that whole philosophy of art in the home. I do think of that while I'm working, how it fits in a space, you know, how it's presented to the audience is a very important part of my art making. I don't know if traditionally artists care about that at all. In fact, I've experienced many artists that don't seem to put any thought whatsoever into how their work will hang. But you know, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses.
That's come up in differing perspectives, I think, with some of the artists we've talked to. Is, do you create and then figure out what to do with it, or do you have the viewer or the buyer or whomever in mind while you're creating? And I know you said like, oh, it's great to sell work, but it's not the point. Yeah. But I think even just having the foresight, thinking of what it might look like in the space, is that transition of your art to be seen kind of thing. You were talking about how your art was sitting stacked in the studio, and now you've reached this point where you're thinking about the viewer while you're creating it. Right. And that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of, it's finishing, you know, like you can make stuff, you could create stuff out of nothing, but there has to be sort of a finish to it. You know, you gotta ground it in this reality at some point in the process. And I think that evolves throughout the process. I think with most artists, it's part of the process. Yeah. It might not be the starting point, but at some point it's got to be the finishing point. Right. Even to the point of where do I put the hanging hardware? You know, piece isn't done until it can be hung on the wall, you know,
true. For sure.
So, or put on a pedestal or, you know, until it can land in the space. Yeah. It's really just conceptual.
Yeah.
That's true.
I read a really interesting piece that talked a lot about what we're talking about right now. And it was an artist who said, I don't take any of that into account when I'm designing the piece, but it's because I think of my art as 80% done by the time I'm done with it. They're like, I give it to a curator and I see that curator as an artist in themselves. She's like, and so I would like to create something that you can then create with.
Oh, that's
in your
wonderful.
Space,
Yeah.
which I thought was a fascinating perspective. She's like, there are artists who don't take it into account at all, and I would fault them for not taking that into account in their artistic process. She's like, but it's very much a part of mine, but left out for a reason.
Sure. No, that's great. Yeah. Including the curator in the creative process is, well, it's really gracious of that artist.
Absolutely.
But I mean, as a curator, you know, when we get works in that don't have hanging hardware, that don't have, I mean, they don't all have to be framed, but they do need to be finished, you know? That finish can be as rough or as refined as the artist's intent. Yeah. But it needs to have a way to be presented. Yep. And, you know, sometimes I step in and help them with that because it's a necessary thing for me to do to be able to finish my creative process of curating a show. Yeah. And with all the artists that I work with, I'm happy to help advise them in that. Many of them just leave it over to me to figure out, but they're all very cooperative also. You know, I don't think anybody's trying to give me more work, you know? And I'm happy to help them with the final presentation because that helps me. Yeah. But I do really like that the collaboration between the artist and the curator and giving them that, you know, freedom to present. Yeah. So you have to trust your curator.
Definitely.
Is there anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to? I know you included in your bio a little bit about stop motion animation. I don't know if we got into that enough or not. I know we talked a little bit about your social media.
Yeah, I mean, we can touch base with that briefly. I mean, it wasn't a huge part of my life, but it is something that I did start. I've only recently started focusing on my Instagram, you know, it's something I became aware of. In the gallery, I had somebody else doing it for years, and now I've taken over the social media with the gallery. Okay. And finding it very difficult to balance that and curating my own social media accounts. Yes. It's a lot of work, and I very much appreciate all the work that he did prior to leaving the gallery. But during the so when I was in film school, I played around with stop motion animation. I did my senior project, a little 60-second stop motion animation, where I learned so much more than I expected or wanted to learn. The lights that we were using, it'd be so wonderful to do it now with like LED technology. Oh yeah. But the lights we were using were incandescents or halogens, and they were melting my puppets as we were working, and it was a mess. But you know, we worked it out, and that's all part of, you know, going to school and studying is that, you know, you learn more from your mistakes than you learn from your successes. Yeah. So then a few years after that, there was a 48-hour film project that toured the country. It came to Philadelphia every year. Yeah. And I put a team together of my peers, and we had the very ambitious goal of animating in 48 hours. Oh my goodness. And we did it with reasonable success. So I did all the math with how many frames per second and how many shots we had to get done per hour, and when we needed to finish so we could get everything to editing and then to music and everything. And it was super ambitious. And I did all the math, and it was going to take 56 hours to shoot our script. It's like, well, how do we solve this? You know, and we had to solve it in the moment because the competition has started. There's a starting point and an ending point to the competition, and it started. I was like, all right, well, we need 2 sets. We need to cut the shooting time in half. Okay. So we built 2 sets, and we had 2 animators and 2 photographers and 2 crews, and we had like an on-set, you know, doctor's office where they're like repairing our puppets as we were going, and we created 2 of everything, you know, and we got it all done. We ended up finishing the project early, like coming in like an hour
That's incredible.
early. And we ended up winning Best Cinematography, I think, because they didn't know what else to give us. They're just like impressed by the fact that we animated. So that was a really cool experience.
Yeah.
And then I have a friend, Carl Lushhold, who's a fantastic artist. He's a photographer primarily, but he and I collaborate on projects. He lives out in Denver, but whenever he's on the East Coast, we collaborate on something, usually light painting, which is another continuous line medium. But he and I have played with stop motion. I build puppets and we shoot little things. Most of them don't go anywhere. They're just little like screen tests and all, but it's fun. Yeah. But during the pandemic, we were asked by the Downtown Business Association to, during the lockdown, to create a thank you video for our patrons. And again, Ward gets ambitious, and Ward decided to animate this like 1 minute video thanking our patrons. And what I thought would take me a day or two ended up taking all week. I was doing like little paper cutout animation, and it's fun. It's on the Bethlehem House Gallery, B House Gallery Instagram page. You have to scroll back to like, I don't know, May or June. Yeah. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then that took me to the time lapse stuff that I've been playing with showing how I make my art. And time lapse and stop motion, very similar. I had one video that I did where I decorated a living room outside in my house, just like in the open space. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun with whatever art. I had my own art and Khalil's sculptures that I have in my own collection, and I did it all by myself. I loaded stuff. I had my furniture storage in the barn where I live, and I loaded everything in the truck and drove it around to the side yard and unloaded everything by myself. And the whole time the camera's rolling, and it's just me like rolling stuff out. And then there was one part that I needed help. And my son, my 14-year-old son, Caius, had just finished his schoolwork. I go inside because they were, doing school from home virtually. Yeah. So I go inside. I was like, Caius, I need your help. He comes out, helps me. So there's this one little frame that you see Caius come in and help me raise, the pipes that the artwork's hanging on. And the video was finished, and I was really happy with it. And then I was like, now I have to put everything away. Like everything. I got to do all this. So I went back and I got Caius. I was like, I'll pay you $10 an hour to help me put everything back in the barn. Yeah. And he was like, awesome. So yeah.
That's awesome.
It's like the definition of like getting into the creative process. You're like doing it. And they're like, damn it. I have to like put all of this away now.
So much work. It would have been better not to do anything.
I've had a series that I've been planning to do, a photography series for a while now. And the biggest thing stopping me is access to a truck and the repeated setup and tear down of the set that I want to do in a bunch of different locations. And I'm like, I need the time to do that.
You need a support group.
Yeah, seriously.
If anyone out there's got a truck,
what kind of truck are we talking? Are we talking a box truck or?
No, just something big enough to put an old teacher's desk in.
I know a guy. So no, yeah, it is. It's the creative energy behind an idea is inspiring and it's motivating. But then that wrapping it up, that breaking it down is like, so it's all worth it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, usually we would wait until after the guest leaves to do our art opportunity for the week. But with the reception of the Glass Show coming up soon, I would love to use that as the opportunity for our listeners.
Okay, fantastic. The Glass Show runs until June 12th, and we will have a closing reception from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on June 12th. We are still asking people to wear masks in our crowds, but we have expanded our capacity. We've been working on limited capacity for several months now, but we've had some success with hosting events safely and responsibly. So we're going to continue to do that, and hope everybody can come out and get some last looks at this Glass Show, which I'm extremely happy with, proud of all the artists that are involved in. in this. And then after that, we'll be opening our summer show on June 25th. So look for, follow our social media at B House Gallery, and follow my social media at Ward Van Haute. It's very, very easy. Check that out. I'll be doing some teasers for the summer show, and just give us likes and follows. It helps us.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So if you're looking for more details on the closing reception or anything on Bethlehem House Gallery, you can go to www.bethlehemhousegallery.com. And then on Instagram, it's at @BHouseGallery. And then if you want to look at Ward's stuff, it's at Ward Van Haute, Haute.
Yep, that's right.
Very good.
Well, Ward, thank you so much for coming on the show
Thank you.
today.
It's really been a pleasure. Thanks for coming here.
Yeah, thank you for having us in
hosting
your
us.
space. This is really fun. This is our first live from somewhere episode, so very exciting for us too.
Awesome. I look forward to hearing the episode. And thank you both for what you're doing. It's really great spreading the word about what's going on in this really, really active and invigorating artist community. So thank you guys for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
And I very much enjoyed the episodes I've listened to, and I look forward to catching up on some of the ones that I've missed, and eventually listening to this one when it comes out. So I'm not shy about listening to my voice. So. But no, this has been delightful. Thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
very welcome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. As always, this is the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast, and today we're recording here at the Bethlehem House Gallery. Have a great week. We'll see you next one.
See you next week.
Bye.